My fellow Muslims, we started last week talking about the days of our youth. If you will recall that some of us, those days are gone, they're behind us, but for many of us, those days are still a reality. And so we are in that moment of our life. Those of us who have passed that stage share our experiences with those who are now at that age. So we started last week to address this issue. And we know for many of us who are older, we can recall back that moment when we were not very keen on religion, when we were younger. To many of us, it took having kids, literally, to act as a stimulator and to energize us to want religion more. Talk to many adults throughout the United States and Canada, this seems to echo itself in many massages and centers that you go. So, no doubt, study after study is showing us that religion and young people are often viewed as an unlikely combination. So I started last week to address this issue. Because as we know, as we said, life is changing everywhere. And so modernity that is setting in throughout the globe. Remember that what we see here is not only limited to this country or the North American continent, but it repeats itself in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, and other places. So we have to understand this issue in the context of the global changes that are going on. But what is clear, whether you are here, or you're back in the Middle East, or you're in Africa or Asia, that modernity and religion are sometimes competing forces. The youth segment of our society, of community, has become particularly difficult to attract. Among Muslims, wherever you go, among mosques, they seem to be having a difficulty attracting and keeping youth within our centers. I remind you of the teaching of Ali radiallahu anhu, who said, raise your children using methods that are different, that were used with you, as they are created for a different time, different challenges. He had a foresight. He had a vision, and he knew that our life is changing and will change rapidly. And what our parents dealt with, what we are dealing with now as adults, and what our children will deal with, will be different times and circumstances. But the bottom line is that the worldliness is an issue that faces the youth. One of the realities of life that is facing the youth is how to negotiate their lives in the circumstances and the environment that they live in. And so the question, what does this mean to Islam and Muslim young men and women? Because there is a culture out there that has been globalized, and it is the culture that the youth are embracing. They're holding on to it. Its standards are defining the outlook of the youth. So whether you want it or not, and we try to fight it in many ways that we can, but what it is touching our lives, our homes, and our families. So this worldliness is an issue that faces the young. And so this movement of focus from the next world, from the akhirah. And as mankind, we seem to focus with a stress now on human love, increasing value placed on the human body, wanting to dress better and to look younger and to portray that image with your body. And all religions are complaining that they're experiencing the same phenomena with their congregations. This is exactly where religions are now. They are forced to find meaning of human destiny in this world, in culture, in society, in our personalities, in our human lives. And so naturally, one of the realities that is facing the youth is this engagement with this reality, this modernity that surrounds them. So modernity is everywhere where you look. But when you study it closely and you look at the thinkers of our time who have written about this issue and who have explained it, they say this about this subject. They say that every era of modern human history and in the past, that modernity or some equivalent term has always meant the ways, the norms, the standards of the dominant and expanding civilization. And today, for the time being, that dominant and expanding civilization is Western standards which define modernity. At one time, there were other cultures and civilizations that were expanding, and their ways defined the times of the past. But now, the reality is that, and it's not only Muslim cultures that are complaining about this. Go to the Eastern culture. Many of the African cultures are complaining of the same. For the time being, this dominant and expanding civilization is the Western standards and Western civilization. That means the popular culture is the universal culture out there. And it is the culture that the youth are embracing aggressively. It is a culture that its standard defines the outlook of our youth. Because of modern technology, whether it is satellite or instant TV or social media, whatever is out there, this has also propagated this popular culture. It has become universal and it has become globalized. It is also very commercial and so mass produced for mass consumption. Therefore, what is termed as popular culture in many parts of the world is an inclination towards Western ways. And there are millions of Muslims who are at ease somewhere within the spectrum of the diverse possibilities of what it means to become Western. Like it or not, shun it, fight it, bring all the teachings you want. It is the reality of what is out there that our youth are embracing. So the youth are living this Westernness. And it's become more obvious with those who are born and raised here. And now there is second generation of Muslims and third generation of Muslims. So Muslim youth in many parts of the Western world, and the advantage is that this modernity that is around them, as we said last week, they also can be exporters and ambassadors of At-Tawheed. So alhamdulillah, there are other positives that we have to look at. We can fight this in other ways, but we also have to come up with what is practical and what is meaningful, and that what we can implement in our communities And one of the things is that the universal nature of modernity, it has brought to this big melting pot of the North American continent youth from all over the world. Many of us who come from cultures that are closed by their own kind, their own language, their own color, their own tongue, their own customs, have only been exposed to that and that alone. And they've never been exposed to someone else from another corner of the world. They've never been exposed to that. So youth from all over the world who are in actuality coming from different backgrounds are now going through this experience together. In a way, Muslims have the ability and the chance of bridging gaps between each other. This can be an advantage. If youth can see this, if masajids can see this, we can harness this in the right direction. It brings that sense of unity where Muslims come from all corners of the world. You just have to travel in other corners of the Muslim world and you will meet individuals who have never seen other than their own kind. When we say kind, we do not mean faith. We mean individuals who speak their own language, look like them, act like them, have the same customs like them. They've never seen anyone else. The second thing is that youth, with this though, what we are saying is that there is a redefined world view. A Muslim who grew up, for example, in a small town in North Africa, in Algeria, or in Morocco, or in the towns of East Africa, or other places in Asia, their world view is rather different. They may have the Islam with them, but their world view is uniquely related to where they grew up. So Muslims who grow up in New York or Atlanta or in Nashville, their world view with their Islam is also uniquely different. But what we're saying is that the trick here is that this new world view of our youth now who are in this continent must be anchored in Islam. It has to be. That has to be the foundation. That has to be literally the pillar, that big pillar that holds everything else. If this is done, then what we're saying is that youth from different cultures can see the universality of Islam's message, and they become a living example of it. Once again, if we are all Egyptians and grew up in Egypt, or if we are all Palestinians and grew up in Palestine, or if we are all Somalis and grew up in Kismayu, a town in Somalia, can't you see then our world views were limited to where we grew up and where we came from? Now that we mingle and meet other Muslims from nations across, and we sit together in one masjid and in one center, and we turn and face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we stand together in prayer, it is that symbol of the ummah that has come together. And so these youth who are here, we have to promote the same understanding, that they become the symbol of the ummah, that they can come together with the universality of the message. It is also an environment that the youth are growing up in. So our youth also, because we are surrounded with so much education, they can also engage with each other, with intellectual discussions, with intellectual engagements between each other. The opportunity exists because they were exposed to educations none of us, or many of us who come from remote parts of the world, were never exposed to those types of education. And education opens the mind to a world of ideas. And when we say education, we're not just limiting to Islamic education. Islamic education is in there, in that education. But there are many other forms of education that Muslims have to learn and have to acquire and have expertise on. So they become discoverers and inventors and they can move that wheel of progress for society at large. When Muslims made an impact on this world, it is because they were inventors, discoverers, and they were learners and thinkers, and their knowledge benefited the entire human race, not only Muslims. So that means those discoveries in the areas of language or mathematics or science, whatever it is, they benefited the entire human race for the time that those benefits existed. When Muslims lost ground in that area, other people jumped ahead and moved on. But now we live in an era of globalization where the world is interconnected. What happens in Tahrir Square or the Legislative Plaza when we are fighting a Sharia bill is instantly seen across the globe. I left Nashville soon after the Legislative Plaza drama and the ordeal that Muslims went through here with that anti-terrorist bill. As soon as I got to East Africa, they were talking about it, and I said, where did you hear about this? I said, well, it's all in the news, brother. It's all over. So that instant beaming of images and information across the globe has what it has made the world interconnected, linked to each other. Reformation. If the argument is that we require reformation of Islam so that modernity is more palatable to our youth, this would mean that Islam is opposed to modernity, because Islam has never been opposed to the West or the East, North or South. Islam is opposed to disbelief. Wherever you are, you turn your faces towards Masjid al-Haram. As it says in the Quran al-Kareem, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of this, and he says, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَإِنَّهُ لَلْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكَ وَمَّا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Meaning that wherever you are, when you go out, turn your face towards Masjid al-Haram. And indeed, it is the truth from your Lord, and Allah is not unaware what you do. Meaning that wherever we are in this world, we face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the direction of the Qibla, and we turn to Allah in prayer. When Islam grew out of the perimeter of Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula, and when it went to Bilad al-Sham, the northern countries of Arabia, and when it went southwards to other countries like Yemen, and when it crossed the Red Sea and it went to Al-Habash, and then it went to North Africa and the east as far as Malaysia and other places, Islam started traveling, expanding both towards the east and the west, south as it did towards the north. Muslims met individuals of different culture, different thinking, and they slowly but surely started to teach them, become role models of what their faith was. And some areas transformed quickly, and they became the lands of Islam, peacefully. So when we depart from our regions, and when we come to this part of the world, our youth must be able to carry on this message. Many are places that I speak and I'm asked these questions. How can we keep our children to have our cultures? Meaning that the person who is asking is saying literally, I want my child to be Somali. I want my child to be Kenyan. I want my child to be Yemeni. I want my child to be Palestinian. And I want my child to be wherever we are from. That is impossible in this country. If you succeeded in the first generation, then know clearly by the second and the third generation, it will disappear. So what is the reality then is what we want to protect is the identity of Islam. and the identity of our beliefs. That is what is important at that time. As the Rasul ﷺ has reminded us in the khutbah that he gave at the end, that none of you are better than another, from an Arab to a non-Arab, from a white to a black. What he was insisting is that the message of the Quran is more important and his sunnah is more important, but not necessarily our languages and our culture. This is out of the mercy of Allah that he created us in many tongues and colors, so we learn how to recognize one another and how to interact with one another. And so then on the question of liberalization, this is a very complex topic. In other words, there are those Muslims who argue, let's make things less strict for our youth. You know, you can say, hey, we don't want you to go and those who say the opposite, let's make things strict. Hey, we don't want you to go and hang out in the mall. You know what? They're doing that in Saudi, in the malls, and in Dubai and in Kuala Lumpur. And you're literally fighting a losing battle in that regard. So embracing modernity, but the precaution here is keeping your actions within the confines of Islam, returning us back to the originality of the message, that this is what we want to promote, that Islamic values surround us wherever we are. Where we live, we have to interact with society. The young men and women of Islam will be required to lead the Muslim world in the years to come. Modernity has become part of life. Whether you are in the East or West, it has emerged as the dominant transforming force in the world. Resenting it and fighting it in the wrong way is a losing battle. That is why there is a major departure of the youth from the centers, because the centers are considered unaccommodative to what they want, their ways maybe. And perhaps not every way is acceptable in Islam. We understand that is not what we're saying either. But what we're saying is that we want to promote the teachings that emphasize the values of Islam. Muslims have questioned whether they have to accept Western style modernization or be deemed anti-modern, or the opposite, become ultra-conservative, and the opposite then. The current debate that is out there, that is occupying the thinkers of our time, here and in the Middle East, you just have to read and see. It is also going on elsewhere. The current debate that Islam and Western modernity can have no conversation, cannot inhabit each other, is not true. Because modernity, Islam has been open to it within limits. That promiscuity that we see out there, that extreme liberalization of the human quality of life and other things, human values that have run away from family, from faith, and from other things, of course Islam will say no to those. But al-birr is not only about tuwallu wujuhakum qibla al-mashriq wal-maghrib. That righteousness and piety is not that you simply turn your face towards east or west in prayer, but that rather al-birr is man amana billah, those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal yawm al-akhir, and on the last day, wal malaikatu wal kitab, and they have these matters of al-aqidah that they are strong in, and they hold on to this value. And it doesn't stop there, because it talks about the human goodness that you have to do, and that you have to promote this goodness wherever you live. For example, that you give to wadil qurba, those who are close to you, wal yatama, those who are orphans, wal masakin, those who are poor, from your wealth. You do charitable things. So you help the less fortunate, the underserved and the underprivileged. This center means to do certain things. One of which is it wants to establish a clinic here, that it will help the poor and the needy, those who don't have insurance, for example, those who have nothing in their lives. And it is looking right now for doctors. And Nashville has dozens and dozens of doctors. And you rarely get somebody strongly coming out to say, subhanallah, this is for the goodness of the ummah. This is like charity. I'm helping human life. I will go out and volunteer. I want to be part of this activity. Can't you see that Muslims, wherever they are, they have to leave a mark, and a positive mark, that human life matters to them, and that they are out there to help my brothers and sisters in Islam. Yes, we face towards Mecca with our faces, but we live Islam with our actions. We become compassionate, always wanting to take care of those disadvantaged individuals. And these are the values that we want to continue to push within our youth. The values of the teaching of our Aqidah, the values of the teaching of what Islam represents globally. Its desire to transform the human condition. And the human condition, open the TV, read the newspaper, look out there on the internet, it is suffering the globe over. Muslim communities must establish centers that become conduits for goodness and good work. Islam, wherever it went, it cross-fertilized ideas, and it uplifted humanity to higher levels of morality and spirituality, religiosity as well, and general progress of mankind. To search for this beauty in Islam, this is a beauty that must be portrayed and must continue. And it must be showcased to the world by our youth. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فيستغفرون وهو غفور رحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين واحد الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ومن والاه. Before I get any further, I first want to remind those latecomers. You know, when the khutbah starts, the hadith of the Rasul ﷺ is clear about that. Al-Malaika, they close their register. And you do not want to be among those that are not registered as having attended this particular session. So make an effort to come on time, leave your worldly matters, and as you feel the masjid towards the second khutbah and it's full, let it be that you make an effort, inshallah ta'ala, coming next Friday, that you make an effort to arrive on time when it comes to al-ibadah. You have the entire day to rush to other things. Make sure that this moment is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the other things that we're experiencing, we have people from 32 or 35 nations when we counted at one time. There's a wave of Muslims that came to this country who came for education. They wanted to go to school here, they wanted to get their degrees, they ended up working, staying here and so on. But there's a big wave of Muslims, and more so in the recent past, in the last 2 decades or so, that also came here because of war. Because of war-torn countries where there were shattered lives, because they were running away from political persecution and they were running away from other atrocities. And so people go through traumatic events, and some of us become affected for years to come. You're here, you have to deal with loved ones who are back there. Sometimes you hear reports, you know, some of us have lost loved ones and so on. So you have to get help. You have to understand this. You also have to know that you are in a country that is privileged with a lot. And one of the areas that this country is really privileged in is its medical resources. And this is a sense and a change in your body that is happening mentally and psychologically, that one has to go and deal with experts. Well, alhamdulillah, the center has organized also as part of just learning. If it's not you, maybe you know someone who is. Next Friday, there will be an event, but after the Salah, we have a guest who is here. He will tell you for just a few minutes what that event will be about. He's a psychologist. And he will be talking about how to deal with this traumatic stress. And it comes in many ways. It's not only about losing loved ones and so on. It comes in many ways in life. It's next Friday at 6 o'clock. I hope you'll make time to attend, but don't leave after Salah for only 2-3 minutes. He'll give you a very quick introduction after we pray. Other very quick announcements is, as you know, well, alhamdulillah, the center has been actively looking for someone who will continue with the work with the youth, with education. Well, alhamdulillah, Sheikh Jibril has agreed to join the Islamic Center of Tennessee. And so I hope that you will also welcome him, work with him. He will be our youth director and he will be dealing with youth education. I mean to announce this because many of you live quickly and this is a community-wide matter and I need for all of you to understand. And that you will support the brother and support the center to make our work in this area successful, inshallah. But you know, something like this, as we say many times, we might bring a sheikh, we might bring an individual who is knowledgeable and they want to teach and so on, but often at times participation is lacking. So we need to take advantage of these things. If the center is making an effort to do this for you and your families, then it's important that you also return that commitment and also bring the youth, bring others who can also, inshallah ta'ala, learn and grow from this experience. Other announcements will quickly take place after the Salah. We're running out of time. Ibadallah. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama salayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Innaka hamidun majid. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah. Wa hayyi' lana min amrina rashada. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على طاعتك اللهم مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. One of the brothers has informed us that a member of the family has passed back home. Inshallah, keep him and his family in your dua. And for all those who have passed before us, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them and gives them al-Jannah. بارك الله لي ولكم بالقرآن والسنة ونفعني وإياكم بما فيهما من الآيات والذكر والحكمة. أقول ما تسمعون. قم إلى صلاتكم.